The truth about gap years is this. Gap years are fun, but outside of that, there are not really much else. So in other words, gap years are massively overrated. And in this video, I want to explain why I think this way by incorporating both a logical/strategic way of thinking and the experience of about 10 people who I know who have done gap years. And so let's start with the first myth. The first myth is that if you don't know what you want to do in your life, you should do a gap year. The problem with that belief is that walking through New Zealand, working in Australia, and partying in Thailand does not actually tell you whether you should study, let's say, business or law. Because those things you find out by trying them and not by doing something completely unrelated. So this whole idea that you can find your way, your path in life by having fun and by walking around and by working a little bit is not valid. You see, with those things like what you want to do in your life, you just have to give many different things a try. So you have to work jobs, you have to do internships, you have to interview people, you have to go to trade fairs, you have to watch videos even. You have to do those things to find out what you want to do and not do something completely unrelated. You see, when you don't know where you want to go, whether you want to go to the left or to the right, about the worst thing to do is to just stop. Because after you've stopped, you still have to try one way or the other. And then why stop to begin with? Why not just try those options straight away, you know? Unless, of course, you want to have fun and explore the world. That's valid. But if your goal is to find out what you want to do in your life, then gap years are not the right approach. Because unless you do 10 different internships, each a month long, you will not find out what you want to do. But you will have fun. And that's okay if your goal is to have fun. But if your goal is to discover what you want to do, gap years are not the right way. Now, the second myth regarding gap years is that gap years develop you socially, emotionally, spiritually, and make you comfortable to be by yourself. They also make you more courageous, more open, and they even make you better at handling finances, responsibility, organization, all those kinds of things. And this is actually true, but the problem is that just moving to another city and working a job or going to university teach you more. Why do those things teach you more? Well, if you have pressure, you generally learn more because time gets more compressed. I want you to picture this. If you have a gap year and you do absolutely nothing for 2 months, that is, you wake up every day and just scroll for 12 hours a day, then nothing really changes. But if you are employed, then it is not possible to scroll for 12 hours a day. And so you'll actually have to figure things out in a more concrete and real way, you know? So this is why if your goal is to become independent, if your goal is to learn, if your goal is to be more social, you can also do this by just moving to another city and by studying or by working. The thing is, if you live with your parents because you were born and raised in a big city and the university is in the big city, then I can understand why a gap year would be useful. But even then, there is other options like doing an internship abroad or studying abroad. Although I'm not really a fan of studying abroad because you lose a lot of time because the semesters often don't align and stuff like that. But generally speaking, there's better ways than a gap year if you want to develop socially. You can just move to a new city and study there. This is generally the better way because then you can combine it with the previous point, which is finding out what you want to do in your life. Now, the third myth regarding gap years is that gap years recharge your energy and make you more able to really focus on then university or work when those things really start. And this can't be really deduced logically, but I can tell you from experience that the people who have done gap years did not have more energy to then study or to then work. They had less energy. And this is kind of interesting because humans are not like machines where you have a certain amount of energy and the energy either goes down or you charge it and it goes up. Humans are more like the more energy you give, the more energy you have. This is why people typically are energized by the gym, and this is why people who go to the gym are generally superior in every way to those who don't, because those who don't have less tenacity. And so when there's like a difficult task, the people who are used to going to the gym will just push through that task with greater ease than someone who does not, simply because the person who goes to the gym is already used to spending a lot of energy. And so I can tell you the same applies to gap years. If you do a gap year, you will not find it easier to then resume studying. It will actually be harder. And so you should not do that if you know that you have not much self-control and discipline to begin with. And this is, I would say, one of the most important reasons, because imagine doing a gap year and getting used to life being so comfortable, to then start university and then it absolutely crushing you. That's not good. It is much better, I would say, to go straight from school to university, or straight from school to work, or straight from school to doing an apprenticeship. And then you can do a gap year. And that, if you really want to do it. But that brings us to the fourth myth regarding gap years, which is that gap years are a unique opportunity that you will never have again, that you should definitely use. Well, this one is really easy to debunk as well, because what's unique about a gap year? Because you can travel around in your country, you can party in your country, you can socialize in your country, you can chill in your country, you can go to the club in your country. So nothing about a gap year is really unique except for the distance and the duration. But the thing is, I would say there is a better way. So I'm in university right now, and the semester is 3 months long. 1 month is exams, and 2 months we have off. And I would say that it is better to go on a 2-month trip or a 2-month vacation than it is to do a gap year, because when you have a 2-month vacation once every few months, you have more variety. Because, you know, the difference between 1 month and 2 months is bigger than between 11 months and 12 months. So this is why I think it actually makes more sense to do shorter vacations more frequently than it is to do one for the rest of your life, essentially. And so, instead of doing a gap year, just go to university, then wait till the semester ends, and then travel for 2 months around Asia, Australia, or Canada, if you really want to go to Canada for some reason. And now, the fifth myth regarding gap years is that gap years give you time to work on your own business. So a lot of people wanted to do a gap year, not necessarily because they wanted to travel and to have fun, but because they wanted to work on their business. And what's interesting is that the people who did so actually stopped working on their business during the gap year. And now you may be asking, why is that? Well, because when you have a gap year, you have so little pressure that you actually lose your drive and creativity. And so if your goal is to do business and you don't have a lot of momentum already, don't do a gap year. It is easier to maintain that pressure like in university or so, or by working something, than it is to do it while you're completely doing nothing. Because the thing is, when you're young, it is kind of difficult to discipline yourself, especially when I look back to who was in 12th grade. it is kind of difficult to pressure yourself when you don't have any pressure externally. You'll only learn to pressure yourself internally over the years. And I would also say, because you don't have a lot of pressure when you do a gap year, most of your products are going to be a little bit delusional because you have no idea what people want, how people think if they're stressed, and what it feels like to actually work and to do things. And so, generally speaking, I would say gap years are a very cringe state of life. And unless you have a really full program, they will feel like a transitional period. And so you'll be very uncertain of yourself. And this is bad for business. Because for business, you need dedication, you need discipline, you need focus. You don't need to be confused about yourself. And because you have so little pressure to then waste a lot of time. And to then also run out of creativity because you don't really have pressure. And so I would say, instead of doing a gap year, just go on a 2-month vacation. Or if your goal is to have fun, just go on a 2-month vacation, right? And if your goal is to discover yourself and to learn to be by yourself, then just move to another city and study there, or just do an internship in another city. Because those things will teach you more or bring more fun than the gap year. Because the vacation adds more variety if like the semester's hard and then you do a vacation. That's, I think, better than living in this very low pressure environment for a very long time so that every day kind of blends with the other. And if your goal isn't to have fun but to discover yourself, then just move to another city and work or study and actually try out the things you want to do and then see whether you like them. And so, I can completely understand if you just want to have fun for as long as possible before you like get enslaved by the workforce or by university. But the thing is, if your goal is to really get a lot of things done in this world within your lifetime, don't do a gap year. If your priority is like to have fun and to chill, then by all means go for it. But don't pretend that you're doing a gap year to learn about yourself or to find out what you want to do in your life or to recharge your energy, because those are all cope. Because it is indeed true. Gap years are for fun. And everything else can be done in a better way, like doing the internships or just doing a vacation. And so, my name is Grill. My goal is to inspire 10,000 good decisions. If this video helped you, subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.